exploring Nashville news and history. Subscribe to both at WPLN.org.
From Nashville Public Radio, I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville. It's Thursday, time for another Roundabout episode. It's the news of the week, analyzed by our panelists from the points of view that span left, right, and center, hitting the brakes on electric vehicle production in Tennessee, AI surveillance of Tennessee students, the latest on the Boring Company's airport tunnel plans, and flooding for our neighbors in Chattanooga. That and more. And the Roundabout also welcomes your voice on the big stories of the week. We'll remind you of the number to call in after the news. This is Nashville.
Sharing news and stories from the voices of Middle Tennessee. This is Nashville. Our show is made possible by Music City Prep Clinic. This is Nashville is in service to you. So if you have an idea for the show or feedback you'd like us to hear, leave us a voice message at 615-751-2500.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. As tomorrow's meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin draws near, President Trump is continuing to talk about a possible second meeting that would include Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. NPR's Danielle Kurtzleben reports.
Speaking on Fox Radio's Brian Kilmeade show, Trump said he has started thinking about the logistics of a second meeting.
Depending on what happens with my meeting, I'm going to be calling up President Zelensky, and let's get him over to wherever we're going to meet. I don't know where we're going to have the second meeting, but we have an idea of 3 different locations.
Trump added that he's considering Alaska, where he's meeting Putin. However, when pressed by Kilmeade about whether he had told Zelensky to be prepared to travel, Trump responded that he would call Zelensky only if the Putin meeting goes well. Trump did not specify what he would be offering or threatening Putin with in tomorrow's meeting. Danielle Kurtzleben, NPR News, the White House.
Some unhoused individuals in Washington, D.C. are beginning to gather their belongings ahead of Trump-ordered dismantlements of their encampments. Earlier this week, the president said homeless people will be moved far from the city. Amber Harding, the executive director of the Washington Legal Clinic for the Homeless, says she believes federal law enforcement will begin systematically rounding up and arresting people who've been living on the street.
If I say you have to go to shelter or, some sort of involuntary treatment, even though you don't qualify for involuntary commitment, and you say no, there's nothing in the law that says I get to arrest you. That is not something that exists in our law.
President Trump says he initiated federal takeover of local law enforcement and the dismantlement of encampments to address rising crime in the city. That is contrary to data showing 2 years of declines in violent crime. As artificial intelligence begins to take over entry-level programming jobs, the once reliable pipeline from a computer science degree to a well-paying tech job is starting to erode. NPR's Windsor Johnson reports on how automation is reshaping opportunities and expectations for a new generation of coders.
The promise used to be simple: learn to code, get a 6-figure job. But for many computer science grads, that's not always a guarantee. Robert Siemens is a professor at New York University's Stern School of Business. He says shying away from artificial intelligence is a mistake.
Don't ignore this new technology. Don't ignore the large language models. Instead, work with them, lean into the technology, try to be creative in terms of how you use it, experiment with it, be creative.
Experts say the trend may be permanent, and it's forcing students and universities to rethink what it means to be job-ready in an AI-saturated industry. Windsor Johnston, NPR News.
You're listening to NPR News. Officials in Juneau, Alaska, are crediting a levee installed by the city for minimizing the damage done by this week's flooding. Hundreds of homes were damaged by floodwaters in 2024 before the barrier went up. Alex Solomon with member station KTOO has the story.
Locke and Melissa Brown are pumping water out of the crawl space of their home. The Mendenhall River hit a record-breaking crest of more than 16.5 feet, but the Browns say their home fared better than it did when it flooded the past 2 years. That's because of the city's new levee, which is made of steel baskets filled with sand, stacked between their house and the river.
If they weren't here, it would have been catastrophic for us.
Without the barrier, city officials say hundreds of homes would have been damaged. For NPR News, I'm Alex Solomon in Juneau.
The United States is charging members of a major drug cartel in Mexico with federal crimes in a case that stems back to a 2019 car accident in a small town outside Knoxville, Tennessee. According to a court filing, 2 drug dealers were involved. Their capture touched off a broad investigation leading to U.S. charges and multi-million-dollar reward offers for the arrest of 3 leaders and senior enforcers, multiple senior enforcers in Mexico of the United Cartels. The Dow is down 150 points at 44,773. The S&P is down 5. Nasdaq's down a fraction. It's NPR News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance, home of the Name Your Price tool, so drivers can see coverage options at Progressive.com or 1-800-PROGRESSIVE. Price and coverage match limited by state law. And the listeners who support this NPR station.
Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Community Foundation of Middle Tennessee, working to help donors make more possible through the power of community giving. More at cfmt.org.
I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville, a Roundabout edition. So on Thursdays, we're talking about the week's news. We're bringing you perspectives across the political spectrum about the biggest stories in our community, and that's whether it's national news or a relatively local issue. In the studio this week are Dr. Ian Shapiro of Tennessee State University just down the road, where he's assistant professor of political science, David Fox, former mayoral candidate and former chair of the Metro School Board, and Fabian Bedne, an architect and former Metro Council member. Welcome to you all.
Hey, thanks.
Hi.
So thanks for helping us, as a community, kind of digest the week's news. And we do want you to join the conversation. We want to hear your 2 cents. What stories aren't getting enough attention? What do you have to say about what's going on now? Join us on air at 615-760-2000. You can also leave a comment on the YouTube stream if you're watching there. There's a link on the show post for this episode, or you can just type WPLN on YouTube and go to the live tab, and you'll be in here in the studio with us. I want to start out with, a field from our terrestrial listening area in Chattanooga on Tuesday. Overnight, heavy rain caused flash flooding, and 4 people lost lives when almost 6.5 inches of rain fell in Chattanooga, the second wettest day on record since the city began tracking rainfall in 1879. So if you think we got a lot of rain Tuesday night, check out Chattanooga. But, one of the lingering questions the city's dealing with is flooding of a new interchange that if you've driven through Chattanooga, you've probably sat in traffic there. FEMA flood maps for the area show the project's within a 100-year flood zone. TDOT spokesperson said project's draining systems are functioning as designed and such. But given what we know about the increase in rainfall in Tennessee, Fabian, when we see this kind of flooding, what does it make you think about for Nashville, for this city?
Well, first of all, I want to say I'm sorry for the people that lost their lives during this flood. I have family in Chattanooga, and we were checking on them, and they told us about these people that suffer the consequences of this flood. And when I was in the Metro Council, one of the things I pushed for is to have a plan that would include the whole city. And that was when we were having the conversation about the flood wall downtown. And my advocacy was, let's do that, but let's also work at the rest of the city because we do flood. We have issues where when we have an unexpected rain like we're having now with global warming, it just has an impact that it goes beyond what our history tells us.
Yeah.
So.
Well, David, obviously you've survived the floods that have hit here in Nashville. How does one kind of, when you're in a public position, try to use a one-time thing that's happening, overnight, 6.5 inches of rain falling, to maybe help get people interested in, doing the things you would need to do to prepare in our city?
I think Carl Dean did a good demonstration of that 2010 when we had the big flood here.
Yeah.
It helped him both politically. It just kind of gave him an opportunity to show his leadership and also get the message out. We need to be careful and things that Fabian's talking about with the floodwaters. And so, good leaders can rise to the occasion. And we saw that here 15 years ago.
Yeah. I do wonder, Ian, it can be so political even when there's, overnight rainfall like this that has happened all the time. But people can still kind of turn it into something that's political because, instantly people, human caused climate change, or you could sort of say, whatever the other side of that debate is. How do you see debates playing out when there are these natural disasters these days on the political spectrum?
Natural disasters are, flashpoints. They make issues like climate change, like city infrastructure, like where we are putting our money at the state and local level really into perspective. Yeah, that can fire up state legislatures, city council members to reprioritize where funds are going and try to assure citizens that things are going to be better the next time. But it also presents an opportunity, not just in Tennessee, in 2010, but states and localities should be talking across areas. In 2013, the city of Boulder, Colorado, where I was doing my graduate work, was hit by another one of those 100-year floods. And so they were problem solving and developing new strategies for immediate assistance and plans for the future. And so I think that it's incumbent on politicians and city leaders not just to be thinking about their own areas, but to be, for lack of a better term, stealing ideas from groups of people who have dealt with these issues in the past.
Well, we'll be watching Chattanooga's response. And, thank you for that. Let's turn to electric vehicles. I don't know if the average Tennessean is aware of just how heavily invested the state is in electric vehicle production, but Tennessee's gone big in the last decade. Just as a reminder here, started with the Nissan Leaf and the associated battery plant in Smyrna, which, of course, I think the Leaf production is maybe moving now. The Spring Hill GM plant produces EV Cadillacs. The biggest bet, though, has been on Blue Oval City, which is being built in the middle of rolling farmland in West Tennessee. When it was first announced in 2021, it was going to be one of the nation's biggest electric vehicle and battery manufacturing sites, and it was supposed to be producing this new electric F-150 pickup truck like right now. Of course, it's still under construction, and this week the news here was that the date for a prototype was pushed back to at least like 2028. Full production wouldn't come until at least a year later. Let me start, David, with you. The Tennessee legislature approved like $900 million in incentives for this project. And I don't know that we'll see much talk of those being reduced because of delays. But as an investor, are electric vehicles still a good place for Tennessee to be subsidizing as a way to produce jobs and a growth in the local economy here?
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of subsidizing really anything in the marketplace and the economy. But that aside, in terms of how the EV industry is doing, we get a little bit distracted by Tesla, which has been tailing off a bit, which is not surprising since they were the first entry into the market. Now they're losing market share. But overall, that market is still growing. Now, the issue down there, of course, is they focused on the F-150 Lightning. And I remember one of my sons said a couple months ago, who drives his own large truck, kind of laughed at the thought that F-150 people are going to be terribly sensitive to issues of global warming and climate change and EVs, because they sort of miss their market a little bit. But overall, it's a like I said, I'm not a fan of the government using taxpayer money to subsidize really any business. That's probably going to continue growing, though, so it's probably going to work out okay.
Yeah. Fabian, are cities still planning for kind of an EV future? There was a time when every announcement was like, well, how many charging spots are you going to put in that parking lot? But clearly those subsidies are kind of being pulled back. Is the energy behind EVs when it comes to design fading?
No, I'm still getting, when I do a project, that is part of the conversation. Either to actually install a charger or to create the potential that in the future the charger could be installed. It is part of the conversation. I actually own an electric vehicle, so I'm a big fan of the technology.
So you're certainly aware of where you can charge and kind of that infrastructure that's around. Where's Nashville lacking there, or is there really enough for an EV owner to get what they need?
Well, I charge at home, so I don't really do long trips. I use it for commuting, so having places to charge is not a concern to me. But I do notice that there is not enough opportunities for people to charge their vehicle. And so we can always use more.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen a few complaints where there are places where charging what used to be free that no longer is. Are you seeing any of that?
No, I haven't noticed. I mean, I think that there are opportunities like in the Volkswagen that sold me the vehicle. It also came with a package where I get free charging.
Oh, I see. I see. If you'd like to join the conversation, the number is 615-760-2000. What stories do we need to be talking about this week? What's not getting enough coverage? And would you like to weigh in? 615-760-2000 or comment there on the YouTube stream if you're watching. So speaking of electric vehicles, we had Mayor Freddie O'Connell on the show yesterday, and he says, like, everywhere he goes, people have something to say to him about this planned tunnel for Teslas to drive people to and from the airport to downtown. This was proposed by Elon Musk's The Boring Company. It's supposed to be privately funded, but they're certainly getting a ton of help from the state otherwise at this point, starting with a free lease of state land as their staging area. The mayor says he's not working against it or for it. He says he's still just this idea that hasn't been proven to him anyway that it could work. He answered a question from a listener named Dennis about whether any city permits have been obtained, and here's what he had to say.
So let me start here. We don't have a ton of information at this point. So this is a state-led initiative. I'll tell you what we've done. We have kind of gotten two people focused on life safety and operations issues. They've compiled across whole of government a list of several dozen questions that we have submitted to the Boring Company. We're working on a engagement with them to make sure we can get answers to our questions. We think that they and the state are going to be fully cooperative in trying to help us get our questions answered. And we're asking questions exactly like yours.
That's Mayor O'Connell from the show yesterday. WPLN also had a story this week about how the Boring Company executives, at least those at the top, didn't seem to understand the difficulty of digging through Tennessee's limestone because they were calling it hard. And it isn't hard. It's actually quite soft, which is what makes it about as challenging as any place you could tunnel. Check that story out from Caroline Eggers to get caught up there. But aside from the geological questions, Ian, is there a case to be made for allowing a company to build a private tunnel if it doesn't disrupt life above ground?
So I know that Nashville is kind of lovingly talked about as the crane city. I don't know how they're going to fit cranes underground as they're building this tunnel. But when it comes to kind of the public-private dynamics of this tunnel, I think Mayor Freddie may have the right approach here of wait and see, make sure things are above board, and when it seems like it's providing some kind of a service to the town, then begin promoting and playing it up. Until then, I think we just don't have a ton of information about how this is all going to play out. But more public infrastructure, I think that's part of his agenda.
Yeah. To listeners, if you want to weigh in on this issue, the phone number is 615-760-2000 to join us on air. Fabian, you were around when we were debating, the big light rail transit proposal, which ultimately failed to pass. The cost to build light rail to the airport, or just about anyway, I think the mayor said yesterday something like $300 million per mile. So if you have something akin to that, although certainly it's not light rail to the airport, but no direct cost to the city, why not work with them?
Well, the issue is that we had a robust engagement over many, many years about what type of a plan the city will vote for. And finally, Mayor O'Connell was able to put together a plan that people actually bought, and the referendum passed, and we get the funding. So the problem with the tunnel is not really the tunnel by itself, is that it's not part of the plan, or it wasn't really designed to complement or enhance or support the plan. And that's the concern I have. Everything we do should leverage resources towards making our transportation in the city work better for all Nashvillians. And that's the problem I see with this particular project, that it doesn't seem to have any particular consistency with what the people actually work so hard to come together with.
It's funny, though. We had a council member on who, actually thought, well, maybe this could be an okay idea before it actually came out and we sort of understood what it was. And do people feel compelled to ask questions because of the person whose name is on top of founding this company, Elon Musk?
It could be, but I own Tesla stock. I don't have any particular issue with the company.
Yeah.
I mean, he's an innovator. He has done some pushing the envelope on so many things. My concern is that having been in the council, Nashvillians want to be part of the solution. They want to be asked, they want to be engaged with, and they want to be able to have an opinion about things. And the state, in a way, in an effort to help us, sidestep that process. And I think what you hear is the frustration that people have for being excluded of something that is going to impact the city.
We'll get to a call in just a moment, but David Fox, let's say you're mayor.
Right.
How do you handle this?
Well, I don't think it should be mutually exclusive. I don't think the public sector should have 100% control over all transportation options here. I think to the extent we can have the private sector come in, especially pay for it, generally all of it looks like, then I think we should welcome it, just like we should welcome Ubers and other hail services. So I think, and we don't know how this is going to evolve. Starting as a fairly low volume transportation means. But who knows in a few years what it looks like. Maybe they have a way to have much higher density moving across. The cost of boarding seems to be relatively manageable. And so I think our best opportunity is to have both a good, thoughtful public plan, but also have it supported with good private initiatives, which this could turn out to be.
Yeah. Let's go to the phones. Dean, you're on This is Nashville. What do you got?
Hi. I just wanted to touch on the point of local control over the issue. I guess, from my point of view, the state coming in with the boring company kind of going over the heads of city leaders and city occupants, for that matter, I sort of have a problem with that. And I also think I haven't really heard much skepticism of the projects that the boring company has had in the past. There seem to be some issues in Las Vegas, and so I haven't heard much comment on that. But I would like to know more of what the plan would be before they are allowed to do this project in the city.
Yeah, thank you, Dean, for that. David, I may go back to you on this kind of going over the head of the city. I mean, the mayor was in here yesterday and said they've known about this for, a year at least, but it sort of suddenly came up and they kind of were not exactly welcome to be part of the announcement, but I think also had their own questions, and so they kept their distance. Anyway, is there an issue here when you clearly don't have the city and state on the same page of something that sort of seems like it's the city's business?
Right. Well, I think optimally you do have the city and state working together, but I think all of us in the city, people who are elected, and those of us who just live here and pay taxes, have a much clearer understanding now than, say, 10 years ago of the relationship between the city and the state. And ultimately, the state, a lot of the local authority is delegated by the state, and the state remains responsible for a lot of things that happen here. So the state has not carte blanche, but they can intervene in most things. And in this case, of course, it's a state highway. So I think it's always desirable to be working together. I'm sorry that didn't happen in this case. It clearly didn't. But it doesn't bother me that the state is there and to be a corrective sometimes if we're not providing services as well as we should be.
All right. We need to take our first break. Our Roundabout panel will stay right here. When we come back, we'll talk about AI surveillance of students in Tennessee and check in on the 7th Congressional District race that's going on now with the filing deadline that just passed this week. Join the conversation by calling 615-760-2000 or leave a comment on the WPLN YouTube stream. Stay with us. This is Nashville.
Funding for This is Nashville comes from you, our listeners. And the Tennessee Education Lottery, proud to have raised nearly $8 billion to support education programs in Tennessee. More information about programs funded by the lottery is available online at tnlottery.com. And Wildwood Resort and Marina on Cordell Hull Lake, offering corporate and nonprofit retreats, getaways, and celebrations, 1 hour east of Nashville year-round. More at visitwildwood.com. And Age Well Middle Tennessee, offering elder care coach, providing online resources and phone consultations designed to help families navigate care for aging loved ones and to assist employers supporting caregiving employees. More at eldercarecoach.org.
Donald Trump will sit down for another face-to-face meeting with Vladimir Putin to talk about the future of Ukraine.
As this meeting in Alaska approaches, Ukrainians, we have mixed feelings.
People do not understand how the fate of Ukraine is going to be decided without Ukraine.
Voices from Ukraine and the day's top global news next time on The World.
This afternoon at 2 on 90.3 WPLN News.
I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville. Well, our Roundabout panel's here with us. Former Metro School Board Chair David Fox, former council member Fabian Bedne, and Dr. Ian Shapiro, political science professor at TSU. So WPLN and ProPublica have been looking at Tennessee's zero-tolerance law on threats of mass violence. We're going to talk about a related story. And if you would like to get in on this conversation, the phone number is 615-760-2000. You know, we've had a number of stories over the last couple of years where you have kids being arrested for incidents that are really not credible threats because there's this zero-tolerance law. And this week, the Associated Press had a story that included an incident at Fairview Middle School in Williamson County. The school had some surveillance software working in the background called Gaggle that I'd not heard of before, but uses AI basically to track kids' online activities through their online accounts that are chat and email. And so in 2023, the software picked up something that a 13-year-old girl, so this is 8th grade, said in a chat. And apparently the story was that the girl had been called a Mexican because of her tan skin, even though she's not Mexican. And at some point, she was asked how she would respond. And in some sort of text or email said, "Tomorrow we kill all the Mexicos." So I say that just to say there's obviously something very serious going on here. But we don't know much about the investigation by the school in this incident. But Tennessee's law requires them to turn such threats over to law enforcement, and they found it through this software, so it became a law enforcement matter. She was immediately arrested, taken to jail, interrogated. Her mom says she was strip searched, and her parents weren't allowed to talk to her until the next day. Her family is suing Williamson County Schools, which has not commented on it. But first, let's get to the use of AI to surveil students. Fabian, would you have concern about districts using these kinds of surveillance to pick up any kind of language that even sounds like a threat? You can imagine why they're hypersensitive right now.
Well, if you check my history, I grew up under the dictatorship. I went to high school during the dictatorship. People were being disappeared.
In Argentina?
In Argentina. You knew that you couldn't use the phone because the government might be hearing. You couldn't talk to people because they could be a spy or report you to the government. And that creates a trauma. So that's why I tend to be very careful about the government getting into the business of keeping track on people or listening to people, and because it just creates an impact on those kids. And I think we need to be concerned about safety and security in the schools and in the streets, no doubt about it, but we have to be careful of the price we are paying when we are making a generation of kids be aware that they have no privacy, or that they could be strip searched, or they could be detained or arrested. And that creates a generation issue that we don't know how it's going to end up. Probably sociologists can tell us better. But,
I mean, Ian, I wonder you work on a school campus every day. I mean, it's a university, but still there are, it's probably different than when you started out as a professor. Are there concerns, though, that the sensitivity may become too high?
So AI is here, and no one quite knows what to do with it yet. I'm sure it will do amazing things in the future, but for now, we're all running our heads into issues of students cheating on tests or writing book reports, and we have these other organizations creating software with some kind of black box algorithm that flips a lot of coins using these large language models to try to categorize particular words or phrases as threatening, maybe at the red level or yellow level or whatever they're doing. And people in their day-to-day interactions with AI, they see it working fast and fluid and pretty well for the most part for just your chatting situations. And so they see AI, and without asking too many questions, they may say, okay, if it's detecting credible threats, then we should, send the state in.
It knows more than me. Yeah.
It knows more than me. And so we're at this place right now where no one quite knows how to deal with this. And when that means that it's giving the state some power to go into people's personal lives and kind of reject any illusion of privacy for students, then we're in a place where we need a public discussion about this and fast.
Well, David, Republican leadership in the legislature has said, and there may be more division on this than I'm stating, but I believe it was Cameron Sexton who was talking about the no tolerance law that was passed a couple years ago is working as intended, even if you do get these stories every once in a while that feel a bit like unintended consequences. But you've been over a school district before. Is zero tolerance really the right answer when you're talking about these kinds of threats and talking about middle school kids?
I pretty much share Fabian's view on this. Yeah. It's just pretty creepy and an invasion of privacy, and I think we too often are willing to compromise the freedom of young people just because they're young people without due cause. And I think we'd be better served finding other ways to keep schools safe than to be monitoring the private communications of young people. So I don't support that policy.
We're going to take a turn to the 7th congressional district race, the seat vacated by Mark Green in the last few weeks. Before we do, let's pick up another comment from the phones. And if you want to join us on a topic, the number 615-760-2000. Jordan in Nashville, I think you may take us back to the airport tunnel. What you got?
Hello?
You're on. This is Nashville.
Okay. Yeah, good. Basically, what I was saying was that the tunnel is a geological non-starter because it's on limestone. And apparently the people who are trying to perpetrate this tunnel don't understand that being hard is not the issue. The issue is that it's porous and it changes shape.
Right.
So,
yeah, we are all learning a little bit more about the geology underfoot with this proposal. Right. So Jordan, right. I appreciate you chiming in on that, and we'll add that to the list of comments and things that we'll keep an eye on. So Jordan, appreciate the call.
Okay, thanks very much.
All right.
Bye.
Let's turn to the 7th congressional district race. The race is kind of heating up, actually. WPLN reporter Mariana Bach did on the field this week.
The Republican side of the race is crowded. Several men are vying for the GOP nomination, ranging from current state lawmakers like Jody Barrett of Dixon, who touts his opposition to the governor's school voucher program, to veteran Jason Knight, who currently serves as a Montgomery County commissioner. These candidates come from different corners of Tennessee's far-reaching 7th district, which spans parts of Nashville, rural counties to the west, and touches both the Kentucky border to the north and the Georgia border to the south. There's less competition on the Democratic side of the race, where the majority of candidates are Nashville lawmakers, like Bo Mitchell, Afton Bain, and Vincent Dixie.
That's WPLN's Mariana Bacchiao kind of giving us the rundown of candidates, and we will not have a quiz about who all is in this race for everyone to recite back to me here. But let's kind of start on the Republican side. David, are you surprised to see, from Jody Barrett, a state representative who's running, that Tennessee's school voucher program, which seems, quite popular among some on the right at this point, being used by a Republican candidate as him kind of standing up to the governor because he voted against it? What does that tell you about this district and the way it leans?
It also tells you a little bit about the politics of vouchers, though. While charter schools are broadly favored by Republicans and conservatives, vouchers are really not.
And charter schools, just as a reminder, these are schools that are privately run, but they essentially are public schools. There's no tuition paid to go to a charter school.
Correct, whereas vouchers would be essentially certificates you could use to buy your child's education at a privately run school. And the politics on vouchers are much dicier, especially as you get outside of Nashville, because hospitals and the school system are the big employers. And so there's big bipartisan pushback when it comes to pushing, which is why there was such a contentious debate a few years ago on this voucher issue. And so I think that is, I guess, Jody's opportunity as he sees, using that as a wedge issue. But with 10 or 11 candidates in this race, the winner, all it takes is plurality. And this is a 60-40 district, roughly 60% Republicans, 40% Democrats, roughly speaking. And so with 10, 11, the winner of the Republican primary could have, 20%, would not be an unsurprising number. So it's going to be an interesting race. And I think whoever writes the best checks and writes the biggest checks and has the best campaigning both online and TV, it probably is going to do it.
Yeah. Well, Ian, there's already some, I guess you call it dark money that's flown into the race from the School Freedom Fund that's pro-private school vouchers that's poured in money into races in Tennessee before, but it's going into this race in ads against Jody Barrett. Fabian, we had Megan Barry, former mayor, run for this same seat a few years ago, and it really wasn't that close. What would a Democrat need to do to have a chance?
Well, I think the mistake is to just look at likely voters to tell you, what the electorate is. And there is a lot of Latinos that live within that district that have not been activated because really nobody is doing that. We started a PAC, Fuerza, which is dedicated to elect Latinos and to support the activation of Latino voters because, we believe that that's what's going to move the state more Democrat. And Republicans have been doing it. They had their own ways to activate Latinos because they saw it. And we want to activate it because I think it's going to move the needle more to something, given the circumstances we're facing today. People are concerned and they want to have a congressperson that is going to advocate for them as well.
If you as a listener would like to chime in on the 7th congressional race, your time is drawing nigh. 615-760-2000 to get in on this conversation. Ian, you may have something else to say about this, but I find that people don't even know if they're in the 7th congressional district, at least in Middle Tennessee. I mean, I think if you're in Clarksville, maybe because this was your – well, actually, no, it wasn't. I'll not get myself in trouble here. Point is, people still don't know what congressional district they're in, especially in Nashville. And even as they're listening right now, may have to reference a map to figure that out because Nashville doesn't really have its own seat anymore. And I just wonder if that becomes a problem over time that Congress is not on the same page as anybody who's in city leadership. Can you comment there and maybe add something more?
Yeah, absolutely. I, before coming here, Googled my address. It turns out I am.
Because you weren't positive either.
I was not
political scientist. There we go.
I think about half of my apartment complex might be in the 6th and the other half might be in the 7th. It's hard to tell with the district lines sometimes. People don't know much about politics. They know even less about state, and it becomes minuscule as they get down to the local level, which brings me to a point that I'm already seeing in this special election, is it's already becoming nationalized. You talked about money coming in from PACs and super PACs, talking about Representative Jody, and he apparently is a Washington swamp snake, from what I saw from the ad.
I see.
I say it in jest, of course. Yeah. But they're linking him to national issues and national personalities, as opposed to talking about issues in Nashville, like infrastructure or other public dynamics. The other quick issue I want to bring up is this fascinating idea that we live very much in a digital time machine where campaigns don't just have to be about the here and now, but they can be about what candidates were saying, a decade ago. And in fact, in some of the negative ads about Representative Jody, we were seeing things from 2016 calling Donald Trump a New York City liberal and that everyone needed to be voting for Ted Cruz instead because he was a true conservative. Right now, they're throwing kind of that hypocrisy back at him. So these are the campaigns of the future. They're all about the past. Yeah. Well, it is fascinating to watch. And I do wonder, you brought up the fact that this will be a special election. Does that make it more likely to kind of become nationalized? Because if it was in a regular general election cycle, it'd just be one more of the hundreds of congressional seats up. Sure. So there's a bit of a tension here. Being a special election would generally mean that only really high attention voters are going to actually turn out to vote. Mm-hmm. It also gives an opportunity to become a flashpoint of whatever political dialogue is going on nationally at the time that can then be played up by those candidates. Because while they may not be paying attention to local Nashville news, they know that maybe some of the national flashpoints are going to permeate, and they'll use that to their advantage. And the people who do that in their campaigns and communicate that well, they'll maybe get a few percentage points. And in a plurality system like we have in this very crowded primary, that could make all the difference. Yeah. Well, and as we've seen already, school vouchers may be, kind of a wedge issue, at least on the Republican primary. Tom, in Williamson County, you're on This Is Nashville with a comment there.
I'm really glad you took my comment here. The way I look at it is, I don't really know the numbers, but this is my concern, that going to a private school costs X number of dollars. And I doubt that school vouchers, the certificates, however they're paid, are going to be enough to fund one kid for a whole year of school that way. And so the family would have to make up the difference for that. On the flip side, if a family's already got a kid in private school, it means they're probably a little bit higher income. And so the school voucher is really some sort of a subsidy for them. And that kind of bothers me a little bit. That's really my whole comment. I mean, I got other opinions about that are not in favor of school vouchers.
We can leave it there, Tom. And we've got, in fact, it was just a couple of weeks ago that someone called into a show we were doing about the school voucher program, which had just closed its first. And there was someone named David who was calling in, and it was the man who's sitting across from me, David Fox. But yeah, David Fox, can you respond to Tom here?
Yeah, the devil's in the details when it comes to voucher programs, and I actually support voucher programs, but especially if I could design the voucher program. When you have one that limits the amount, I think it's $7,500, $8,000 capitated amount per student, I think Tom is correct in that it does favor middle-income people who have the wherewithal to round out the total tuition.
Yep.
My preference would be more of a means-tested approach, to have a pile of money available, have it means-tested so the lower-income people would have the most generous and perhaps 100% voucher. That's how I would prefer to do it. These have been around. Alum Rock, California was the first to do a voucher experiment, 50 years ago, and ever since there's really never been one done in a way has worked well. But this could evolve successfully. People are eager to get them, and I'm hopeful that they keep on tweaking it and it becomes a meaningful part of the system here.
Tom, thanks for the call. Appreciate you chiming in. One more comment that came in from our YouTube stream, folks. I don't know how to pronounce Infinite Valence, but says nothing will change. And this is a reference to the 7th Congressional District open seat. Nothing will change until we get ranked choice voting. I've not been represented in 25 years. Can you interpret that for us, Ian Shapiro?
Sure. So ranked choice voting is an alternative method of tallying votes. They did it in the New York City mayoral race, which happened a few weeks ago. And some of the proposed benefits of ranked choice voting are that you don't end up with maybe a strict two-party system, and individuals are able to vote sincerely as opposed to strategically, since they can rank candidates. And even if their most preferred candidate is one of the least popular ones, they still have their second or third choice alternative tallied at the end of the day.
I see. Anthony Ulmer also commenting on YouTube that local politics in Tennessee are so gerrymandered that it is hopeless here. Everyone's caught up with the silly culture wars issues and not the real stuff. Fabian, do you see some truth in that?
I guess so. There is a lot of things that don't really have to do with the issues that get caught up in the election, and but it's what you were talking before about the social media component. I mean, when I was running for office, even that will be the case. I will get asked about things that I was excited about, policy, about making the city better, and I will get a question about something that somebody had posted on social media. I'm like
national politics, or you're saying just something that seems irrelevant to politics?
Something that somehow gets elevated because of the algorithm on the social media, and all of a sudden, instead of talking about creating more jobs or a better quality of life or a more inclusive city, then you have to answer questions about some. I won't even mention it. I don't remember the details. But.
Well, thus is politics. We're going to take one more break, and when we return, we'll talk about the new ICE detention center coming to Tennessee, and take a moment to chat about the state fair. Starts today in Wilson County. Join the conversation on air with a call to 615-760-2000, or comment, as many of you have been on the WPLN YouTube stream. Stay with us. This is Nashville.
Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners. And SCRI Oncology Partners, globally recognized for their commitment to transforming cancer care. With a multidisciplinary team of clinical trial leaders and cancer specialists, they bring personalized treatment to the forefront of care. Info at cancercarescri.com. And Amazon, proud sponsor of WPLN's Daily Show, This is Nashville. Engaging our differences so we can discover our unity. More on Amazon's community work at aboutamazon.com. And Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee, serving the young and young at heart right here in Tennessee for 80 years. Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee. Learn more at bcbst.com.
Nashville Public Radio, we're not done. We're not going anywhere. And it is all because of you. I'm music reporter Justin Barney. It's true we were down $400,000, taken back through the federal clawback. But your contributions filled the gap. Together, there's more work to do. We're committed to serving you and to figuring out our new funding reality. You can continue to support us at WPLN.org/give. And thank you.
I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville. We're going to wrap up our weekly Roundabout episode talking immigration and customs enforcement and the presence in Tennessee. We've got Dr. Ian Shapiro of TSU, former Metro Council member Fabian Bedne, and former Metro School Board Chair David Fox. So there are a bunch of people worked up, at least on the Reddit subthreads, about the Department of Homeland Security holding a recruitment event for immigration agents on city property this weekend. That city property is at Bridgestone Arena during a professional bull riding event. Fabian, I don't even know if you knew about this before you were prepping for today's show. We did confirm it. It is indeed something that's planned and is happening, and it's on the DHS website. But would it be appropriate for the city to intervene, like to essentially censor an event just because it's on city property?
The city has no role on immigration. That's a federal issue.
Yeah.
In the past, the city did some things when it had to do with state issues like gun control or other stuff, like if there was a national convention. I personally think that our federal money will be better spent creating a more robust judicial system that will help people that want to change their immigration status to be able to get in front of a judge than in a punitive thing of enforcement that we are seeing now. So you're asking the wrong person. I really think this is the wrong policy to make a better country that reflect what people want. People in America want new Americans to actually get out of the shadows and have an immigration status. And we are actually doing the opposite. People are afraid to go to the courts because they will be arrested. I mean, it's just creating a really bad situation to get people to get involved in immigration. Sorry for the long answer.
I wouldn't call it long. And if you'd like to join the conversation, the number is 615-760-2000. David, right now we're having a lot of friction with the federal government in Nashville. What is that doing kind of the power of mayors and city officials around the country? Like, are they finding out they've got less power than they thought of, like control over their own city?
Well, you're seeing this dynamic play out in states like ours. You're seeing it in Texas. It wasn't that long ago, 10 or 15 years ago, when there was a series of books and conversations about, the mayor is the most powerful person in America, essentially. Yeah. And I still believe that. I think that's the best unit of change to affect change. But if I may come back just briefly to that immigration issue and the ICE event, if that's okay. I think we have to, we're a country of immigrants, and the future depends on having vibrant immigration. But you have to see, why did we arrive at the point where we are now? And in my view, and maybe you don't want to nationalize it, but went through 4 years of a largely open border that was uncomfortable to people. And historically, if you look at our country, when we go through large periods of very, very large immigration, there's always a pushback. And we can have, I think we should have very vibrant and large amount of immigration, but I think this is a self-inflicted problem that should never have happened, and because we are a welcoming country, and I certainly share that, and I wouldn't want this. I wouldn't obviously want the city to interfere here, as Fabian said, but I just am sorry that this tension was created at the federal level when it didn't need to happen.
Now, the numbers, I know the word open border gets thrown around quite a bit, but I think the actual numbers of folks coming across the border illegally is not that different from the Biden administration to the years before it. When you say the word open borders, what are you referring to?
Well, actually, the numbers have come down an awful lot.
Yeah. Since then.
Yes,
but,
yes, since then, and pretty much immediately. It was when I was running for mayor that I first learned the concept of open border. Because when I was talking, this is 2015, I was talking about, I think we need to have a path for people who've arrived in our country, help so they can become citizens like everyone else. I said, then I think we need to develop a rational system at the border so we're filtering people and allowing people in. And that's when all of the people in the immigrant community just bolted. I didn't know until then there were people who were just completely open borders, no filter, nothing. And I didn't. And so that was an education for me.
Yeah. Fabian, why don't you weigh in here?
Yeah, I think the word open border is misleading because the people that came under Biden administration, they actually were asylum seekers and refugees. They were legally admitted into the country, waiting for a judge to decide if they were going to get, the asylum that they were seeking.
You're saying these were, and was this mostly like this app that sort of let them be in the country, kind of just waiting on their appointment?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't only the app. I mean, somebody that has a legitimate reason to ask for asylum, they come to the border, they talk to an immigration person, and they get let in. Yeah. The thing that frustrates me is confusing undocumented immigrants who may have overstayed their visa or they might have sneaking into the country with people that legitimately came here under the Biden administration looking for a safe place because they were afraid of what was happening to them in their home country. So what we see now is people confusing everything and saying that we had millions of people that came here illegally when they actually came here legally. They applied for a refugee status at the border. That gave them a social security number, the ability to work and to be able to be safely in the U.S.
And I would be remiss if I didn't point out the fact that I want to take this back to the detention center around Mason, right?
And just for listeners who are catching up here, like in West Tennessee, we learned this week that the city of Mason is going to turn a prison that they have into an immigrant detention center for ICE.
Right. I'm actually about 30 pages now into a fairly recent book, The Power of the Badge by fellow political scientists Emily Ferris and Mira Holman. And they talk about this idea that at the local level, sheriffs have a lot of power, and that has the potential to generate inequality and incarceration and pullovers. And it comes down to this fact that people want to have some policing. We want to live in safe communities, but we want to know clearly who we can hold accountable for their decisions. And when you begin to have, more local federal entanglement when it comes to incarcerating people and keeping them, it becomes very hard to know who to hold accountable and what levers you need to be able to pull in order to make your community the way that you want it to be.
You're saying that when you're not sure if this is actually, I guess people's complaint about, let's say, like ICE agents wearing masks and not being easily identifiable, that would be the problem.
Precisely. If I see something, say something, who do I say it to? That's not always clear when there's federal, state, and local officials in your locality.
Yeah. If you'd like to jump in on the conversation, the number is 615-760-2000. So this detention center that's coming to rural Tennessee and Mason, it actually happens to be right there next to Ford's Blue Oval, where they're working on electric vehicles that have not come so quickly, and they sort of see this as a potential economic development boon for them. The arguments in favor, there was a meeting in Mason this week, and the arguments in favor were about economics. The town's really struggling financially, so jobs, increased tax and utility revenue, that'd be positive. Arguments against included some negative consequences for families in the community, including detention of people who are not dangerous criminals. David, can you blame a town like Mason for who are counting on those Ford jobs that have materials like that yet, using a detention center as a growth strategy?
Yeah, I think that's the point. And interestingly, their mayor is a first-generation Egyptian, or immigrated from Egypt, and he's pushing it for economic reasons. I was looking at the salary or the income they'd make would be about $50,000 per year, which is not far from the median U.S. income. So I think there's reason to understand why they would favor it for the reasons you're talking about.
Yeah, and Core Civic would be the company that is would be in charge of this thing, and that's a company based here locally that runs prisons around the country, owns prisons. Pretty controversial business a lot of times, and they have many opponents who like to point out that their track record of maybe understaffing prisons at times, but they still look like good jobs in your community. If you're talking about like a $50,000 salary in a rural town like Mason, Fabian, I wonder, is there anything that Core Civic's critics on the left might be missing sometimes when they kind of fight the company tooth and nail about expanding?
Well, I think there are different conversations. One is about Core Civics. The other one is about privatizing the our jail system. Mm-hmm. And then there is the bigger question is like, why do we have 4 million people in jail in the U.S. at any given time? I mean, it's like what type of how do we want to address these issues? Like, that's what I brought up before. I had invested in the judicial system, make sure that we on the front end help people, come out of the shadows instead of investing so much money and putting them in jail and in a black hole type situation.
One last comment on that. Anthony Ulmer from the YouTube stream says, I'm from a rural town that lost its last factory recently to Mexico. Those rural folks are mad because they think immigrants are taking their jobs, and that NAFTA might as well be used as curse words. So we'll leave that discussion there. We'll do one more comment there. I'm not sure how to say. PM Pirer says, I think the very idea that a prison and a detention center should ever be a financial opportunity is reprehensible from the start, and there needs to be other opportunities created for small towns. Let's end on one light note, and that's going to be at the fair. Okay, guys? It's been 4 years since the State Fair moved out of Nashville. The Wilson County, Tennessee State Fair starts tonight. Anybody here a regular? It's been a few years since I went to the Wilson County Fair.
Our family used to go occasionally when it's local.
Well, it moved because Giada's Park was built on the fairgrounds. Wilson County Fair was already like 5 times bigger. But I do wonder, Ian, maybe you could answer this. Does a city like Nashville, it's kind of this urban place, miss anything from not having kind of this rural activity in it where you can see a chicken and pet a cow and that kind of thing?
Oh, so I'm a biased partisan of the Indiana State Fair.
Okay.
My grandparents worked there for many, many years. My grandfather will talk your ear off about these issues. And I'll tell you this, if the Nashville Fair, or where is it now?
Well, it's in Wilson County, so in Lebanon.
Okay, so if the Lebanon event doesn't have the world's largest pig, for me, it's just not worth the trip because I'm an Indiana guy.
Well, which does have the world's largest pig?
Oh, of course. I mean, they have a sign that says world's largest pig on it.
Well, I'm sorry that I didn't know that. Well, thank you so much to our Roundabout panel, Dr. Ian Shapiro of TSU, Fabian Bedne, former council member, David Fox, former chair of the Metro School Board. We'll be back each Thursday this month, different cast of characters, but to have this same type of discussion on the news, thank you, callers, for joining in this hour. So, This is Nashville is a production of Nashville Public Radio. Today's episode was produced by Mary Mancini, directed by Tasha A.F. Limley. Josh Deepen was all over the phones there. Our board operator is Liv Lombardi. The masterminds behind our theme music are LaRange and Namir Blade. Listen back at thisisnashville.org or wherever you get good podcasts. Also, try your smart speaker. It's very easy. Just say, play the latest episode of This is Nashville, and you'll hear it. Or you can go back and watch the YouTube stream at the WPLN YouTube page. The conversation doesn't end here. You can comment, tell us what you want to hear on the show by leaving us a message at 615-751-2500. You can also find us on Blue Sky, Instagram, X at This is Nashville. This is Nashville. I'm Blake Farmer. Go in peace.